I hope you're ready for me to penetrate your ear holes with a bunch of words that sound like they were generated by an evil AI from the future. With the releases of the Wild Force and Cyber Judge sets in Japan on January 26th, we know a lot of the cards that will be included in our Temporal Forces set launching on March 21st. The first main set of 2024 introducing us to the H block of cards on the same day that all E block cards rotate out of Standard. There's going to be plenty of game-changing cards in Temporal Forces, along with several new Ancient and Future cards. If everything I've just said confused you, basically these cards I'm talking about today in this video will come to PTCGL on March 21st. As we know from the official press release, Temporal Forces will have 7 Ace specs, 13 Pokemon EX, 2 Terra Pokemon EX in the form of Wugtrio and Farigiraf, and over 160 total cards. While this isn't a full rundown of every card coming in Temporal Forces, it's a preview of most of the noteworthy cards you can expect in 2 months. Of course, I'm kicking things off with the return of Ace Specs. First teased at Worlds last year, Ace Specs are like Radiant Pokemon but for trainers and energy. You can only have one Ace Spec in your deck, so choosing which one is important. Temporal Forces will have a total of 7, and it's clear which one is the best: Prime Catcher. Searchable with cards like Irida and Arven, Prime Catcher is an item-based Guzma. You dust up one of your opponent's Pokemon while also switching your active. It's simple yet elegant, just like your father. I had someone comment on a recent video that my "your mom" jokes detracted from the overall experience, so I can only assume they wanted me to go for their dad instead. But yeah, Prime Catcher will be the most played Ace Spec because it's awesome. Choice Belt on steroids, Maximum Belt boosts the damage you deal to your opponent's Pokemon EX by 50. Unlike a certain other Ace Spec I'll talk about in a second, you control how good Maximum Belt is. And since we don't have a Choice Belt for EXs yet, Maximum Belt will definitely help fix some math, especially for Pokemon like Arceus V-Star, Charizard EX, Lugia V-Star, and Raikou V. Then we have the Future and Ancient Ace Specs. Reboot Pod attaches an energy from your discard pile to each of your future Pokemon in play, opening up the potential for insane turn 1 plays, especially with someone like Iron Hands. And for Ancient Pokemon, we have Drums of Awakening, which draws you 1 card for each Ancient Pokemon you have in play. I think Roaring Moon will still choose Prime Catcher over playing the Drums, but being able to draw 3 or 4 cards out of nowhere with an item can't be overlooked. If we lived in a world where Lost Vacuum didn't exist, Hero's Cape would be amazing. Giving an extra 100 hit points to any Pokemon is insane, but with Lost Vacuum being played in most top decks, Hero's Cape could end up being fairly useless. Though Snorlax Block will probably go crazy with it since they use Misfortune Sisters to discard your items. The other 2 Ace Specs, Master Ball and Neo Upper Energy, are fine, just outclassed. Master Ball gets you any Pokemon from your deck. Cool. And Neo Upper Energy gives any Stage 2 Pokemon 2 energy of every type. If you're playing a single prize deck, Reversal Energy is probably better since you can run 4 and don't have to rely on a single copy of Neo Upper. For Stage 2 EX decks, it's good to have, but you can't reliably rely on it and would have to build your deck in a way that treats it as a luxury, not a necessity. Now the supporters. Remember Wally from back in the day? Salvatore is kind of like that, except with a major caveat. Salvatore can evolve any of your Pokemon even if it was put into play that turn, but it can only evolve into a Pokemon without an ability. The combo everyone's looking at right now involves Banette EX. You go second, Salvatore into Banette, and stop them from using items. To further boost the damage, you poison them with Brute Bonnet, drop Radiant Sneasler, and include the new stadium, Dangerous Jungle. Similar to Verbank City Gym, Dangerous Jungle puts 2 extra damage counters on poison Pokemon between turns, though it doesn't affect dark types. So with this combination, your opponent can't play items, you're dealing 30 damage with Banette, and an extra 50 damage between turns with poison. Yeah, that's not going to be fun to go against. Speaking of not having fun, there's also Bronzong coming in Temporal Forces. Utilizing the same strategy as Banette, Bronzong prevents your opponent from playing Pokemon from their hand to evolve. You can get around this with Technical Machine Evolution and Salvatore, but it's yet another card that will be used to annoy people to no end. Continuing the blast from the past, Nymphomaniac's Desire is just Mallow from Sun and Moon, stacking your deck with any 2 cards. It works great with cards like Electric Generator and Radiant Greninja. Either put 2 Lightning Energy on top for the Jenny, or put 2 Jenny on top for Greninja. And if you remember back in the Zoroark GX days, Mallow was super powerful. We have similar equivalents these days in both Kirlia and Golden Go EX, so don't be afraid to share your deepest desires with your opponent while you stare deeply into their eyes. The rest of the supporters are a bit lacking. I'm not sold on Bianca's sincerity. Sure, it screws over Zarina, but it's a very specific supporter that seems worse than Professor Turo. And if Rika hasn't seen play, I'm not sure if Explorer's Guidance will. While it can help put energy in the discard pile for the new Roaring Moon deck, and it is an ancient card, I think Professor Sada is still the much better option. Then there's Airy. Temporal Forces introduces this supporter, which helps catapult Snorlax block into the stratosphere of powerful decks. Airy lets you discard any 2 items from your opponent's hand. If they're saving a couple of switch cards, well, now they don't have them. Another great mill-type card is Hand Trimmer. While it can also be used to punish Snorlax block, if your opponent is just draw passing and building up a big hand, you can force both players to discard their hand down to 5. Gone are the days of building up a 10 to 15 card hand with Gardevoir or Lost Box, because now you have to be constantly aware that this thing is getting ready to trim your hand. Hand Trimmer also makes the Among Us from Silver Tempest a highly playable card, forcing your opponent to discard their entire hand if you discard Among Us with the effect of their Hand Trimmer. Sticking with items, so you know how Battle VIP Pass is rotating on Temporal Forces launch day? Well, don't worry, there's a replacement in the form of Buddy Poffin. Instead of being limited to turn 1, this item allows you to put any 2 Pokemon with 70 hit points or less directly onto your bench throughout the entire game. Obviously this is more balanced than VIP Pass as it forces the Pokemon to be low HP, but it means Stage 1 and Stage 2 decks still have a good way to get out their low HP basics. And for the last item, we have Order Box. Basically an item-based Steven's Resolve, it allows you to put any 2 cards into your hand at the cost of ending your turn. Yeah, Temporal Forces really encourages people to play stall and control decks, and I'm not excited about it. What I am excited about is the release of Emergency Board. We've been lacking a good retreat tool card, and with Temporal Forces we get, well, not a good one, but it's decent. Similar to Escape Board, attach it to a Pokemon, now the retreat cost is 1 pip less. But if it has 30 hit points or less remaining, that retreat cost is free. Basically, it just reduces the retreat cost by 1, which is good, especially since we're losing Escape Rope with rotation. Just remember that Snorlax laughs in the face of Emergency Board. The other tool card in Temporal Forces is Heavy Baton. Kind of similar to Wishful Baton, but not really. Attaching Heavy Baton to a Pokemon with 4 retreat allows you to save up to 3 energy when it's knocked out and put those energy wherever you want. The obvious partner is Iron Hand Sex, meaning you can essentially loop back-to-back hands. However, there are downsides. For starters, Beach Court. That lowers Iron Hands to a 3 retreat cost Pokemon, making Heavy Baton useless. And of course, Lost Vacuum can just get rid of Heavy Baton. Still, it's something to think about. Mist Energy is a card we desperately need in Standard. Instead of having to rely on Toedscroll EX, now you can just attach a Mist Energy to a Pokemon, and all of a sudden it's immune to effects of attacks like Sableye Lost Mine and Roaring Moon's Frenzied Gouging. While it might help Lugia V-Star become relevant again, a crazy combo for Mist Energy is with Ferreteraf EX. Since Path to the Peak is leaving with rotation, Ferreteraf with a Mist Energy is immune to all attacks from basic Pokemon EX, including Roaring Moon, and immune to the effects of Frenzied Gouging, meaning you just kinda win the game. Now, if Roaring Moon starts teching in Giacomo, we're all screwed, so no one tell them. I already talked about Dangerous Jungle, so that leaves Full Metal Lab as our other new stadium. Similar to the effect of Full Metal Wall GX, Full Metal Lab reduces the damage all metal Pokemon take by 30. With Crystal Cave rotating in March, you could use it to help further reduce the damage a Revavroom EX with 4 Rigid Band takes, but since Full Metal Lab can so easily be bumped by your opponent, I don't see it being played too heavily. Now we move to the support Pokemon. A reprint of Time Recall Celebi from the Sun and Moon era, Relicanth allows your evolved Pokemon to use any attack from its previous evolutions provided they have the necessary energy. One fun combo involves the new Incineroar EX. While Incineroar is fairly good on its own, dealing 240 damage and burning, with an ability that reduces the energy cost by 1 colorless for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, it now can copy the attacks of either Litten or Torracat. Torracat's great because it can buy your Incineroar a turn, while Litten allows Incineroar to hit for 20 damage per damage counter on itself, allowing it to reach up to 600 damage for 2 energy. Much easier to get into play than the Stage 2 Magnezone, Metang's ability allows you to attach any basic metal energy from the top 4 cards of your deck to your Pokemon in any way you like. Yeah, you lose those 2 extra looky-loos you get with Magnezone, but you can just use TM Evolution and Metang's good to go, rather than trying to finagle a rare candy and Magnezone on turn 2. Basically using Polymerization on Manaphy and Jirachi, Rabsca keeps your bench Pokemon safe from damage and effects of attacks, sort of like Machoke from Sun and Moon. While it's a stage 1, you can get it up and running quickly with TM Evolution, and you do save yourself a potential bench spot for running Manaphy and Jirachi separately. I don't know how much it'll be played this year, but if we don't get another bench barrier card, Rabska will be our Manaphy replacement in 2025. I haven't talked about Snorlax in a minute, so here's Lickitung. Arguably better than the promo Manaphy since it uses a colorless energy and has more hit points. Tunreal can put 2 Pokemon from your opponent's hand directly onto their bench. This means you don't have to use Erica's Invitation as your supporter to bring somebody out. And by using Grabberwell, you could Iono them out of a hand with no Pokemon into a hand with many Pokemon. I didn't really know where to put Pidove. It's not really playable since the 2 Unpheasant we'll have access to aren't amazing, but the ability is so cool. If Pidove has 30 hit points or less remaining, you can do that with Gapejaw Bog. You can search your deck for an Unpheasant or Unpheasant EX and immediately evolve into it. The wording suggests an Unpheasant EX will come out in the future, so now we play the waiting game. If you're crazy enough to think Ting Lu EX will be good post-rotation, as a reminder it doesn't block EX Pokemon abilities, Drillbur is a fun partner. Slap Drillbur down, put 3 fighting energy in your discard pile, accelerate it with Koraidon EX, and use Heavy Baton to keep that energy in play. Or you can just use 4 Earthen Vessel. That's probably better. And finally, Reuniqueless. Yes, that's how you say it. Justin Basil doesn't believe in it enough to give it a proxy, but I see its potential. Arguably a better Orbeetle, Reuniqueless lets you look at the top 8 cards of your deck and put any Pokemon there onto your bench. This includes Stage 2 Pokemon. So you can stack your deck with the Nymphomaniac, guarantee any 2 Pokemon, and if anybody else shows up, it's all gravy. Obviously, its usefulness will depend on the quality of Stage 2s going forward, but I believe. And now we move to the attacking Pokemon. There's a lot to be excited about in Temporal Forces, especially on the Ancient and Future side. As a quick refresher, the most useful existing Ancient and Future Pokemon are Iron Hand Sex, Iron Valiant EX, Roaring Moon EX, and Brute Bonnet. And the most useful existing trainers are Professor Sawdust Vitality, Earthen Vessel, Ancient Booster, and Future Booster, though Techno Radar will definitely see an increase in play. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's start with the Majestic Hentai, aka Gouging Fire EX. This one's fairly easy to build. The attack does 260 damage for 3 energy, so you'll want to use Professor Soda, Magma Basin, and your attach for turn to get it going. Since it can't use Explosive Fire again until it switches, put in 4 Switch Card. And attach a Future Booster to give it 290 hit points. If the 260 damage is a bit low, run the Rapidash and now you can hit 290 or 320. Then we have Angry Suicune, aka Walking Wake EX. Again, the combo of Soda and Earthen Vessel is great, and you can choose either Double Turbo or Palkia V-Star to fulfill the rest of the energy requirement. Since Whacking Off only does 240 damage if they have a status condition, you'll need to play Brute Bonnet. You'll also have to decide if Radiant Greninja is better for draw, or if Radiant Sneasler is better for extra poison damage. And finally, the ability allows it to go through something like Mimikyu, and it's also unaffected by Goodra V-Star's damage reduction. Remember Reshiram and Zekrom GX, the card that everyone thought was better than ADP and we all turned out to be very wrong? Well, I'm guaranteeing that Raging Bolt EX will live up to the hype, dammit. For a Lightning and Fighting energy, Raging Bolt does 70 damage for each basic energy you discard from your Pokemon. Since it's an ancient Pokemon, you run Professor Soda to get Raging Bolt charged up. Then the logical partner is Sandy Cheeks EX, but that only starts working when your opponent has taken 2 prize cards. Or go with Lucario, the choice is yours. Everyone agrees that Torterra is the best Diamond and Pearl starter, and the new EX could definitely be a thing. Boasting 340 hit points, Torterra EX does 30 damage for each of your grass Pokemon in play, all for a single energy. With a full bench of grass types, you're dealing 180 damage. Yes, it one-shots Charizard and Roaring Moon, but it's still fairly weak. There are positives though. The new Turtwig survives a Radiant Greninja attack. The old Grotle finds all of your Pokemon, and you can pair Torterra with things like Kricketune, Rabska, Baby Torterra, and the new Whimsicott, which is a more focused Cheryl when you evolve into it. I'm not super stoked about Torterra, but it could still be fun. And then we have this thing. While the image may be confusing right now, you will know its name soon enough. Future Box. This new archetype uses the new Miraidon's attack to deal 40 damage and accelerate 2 energy from the deck to your future Pokemon. Except that 40 damage can be boosted by 20 with Iron Crown EX's ability. So put 2 Iron Crown down, now Miraidon can one-shot a Comfey or a Ralts or a Charmander or a Pidgey. Oh, and Iron Crown's attack goes through Manaphy, just saying. The other future Pokemon you'll potentially run are the new Iron Leaves EX and Miraidon EX, as well as Iron Hands EX and Iron Moth to help deal with weakness. And you can chuck in Radiant Charizard because why not? Reboot Pod helps put more energy into play, while Experience Share keeps it in play. Iron Leaves will be a big part of the deck, as it can one-shot Charizard and Roaring Moon. Iron Leaves also pairs well with something like Arceus Giratina, as the ability is similar to Articuno GX's. When you slap down Iron Leaves from your hand, you can put it in the active spot and move any energy from your other Pokemon to it. Switching to the single prize Ancient Pokemon, there's two good ones for very different reasons. Great Tusk evokes memories of Devour Durant. If you play an Ancient supporter from your hand, it mills 4 cards. There's only 2 options for them, Professor Sada's Vitality and Explorer's Guidance, so you will need to run basic energy. Otherwise, it's fairly straightforward. Mill 4 cards each turn, try to catcher up somebody difficult to retreat, and use Ancient Booster to give Great Tusk 200 hit points, making it that much tougher to KO. Baby Roaring Moon is interesting, dealing 70 base damage plus 10 more for each Ancient card in your discard pile. Its success depends on the quality and quantity of future Ancient cards. Right now, there's a good chance you can get 12 or so Ancient cards in the discard by turn 3, dealing close to 200 damage thanks to the likes of Earthen Vessel. But I've been bit in my butt by your dad before, so I am hesitant. Still, the higher damage potential means it's a better option than Morpeko, so don't be surprised if you see a lot of it in the future. Now I'll do a quick wrap-up of some of the other Pokemon coming in Temporal Forces. Gengar EX could be annoying, but you need 3 of these Stage 2 Pokemon in play for the ability to be truly meaningful. And Scizor EX could pair well with Metang, but it just seems like a lot of work to do the same amount of damage as Walking Wake, basic. Wugtrio EX would be bad even if Manphy didn't exist, Iron Boulder is fairly disappointing all around, and the new Koraidon just don't quite have it. Yeah, Kaiser Tactile on the EX does 280 damage, which is great, and you can use Radiant Charizard in the deck, but I don't know. Something about the cards just don't grab me by the Pokeballs. What does grab me and won't let go is Iron Thorns. I definitely have a thing for cards that discard your own deck and disappoint you like my children disappoint me every day. Depression reveals the top 5 cards of your deck, then does 70 damage for each future card you discard. So load up your deck with Miriam, Super Rod, and a whole whack of future Pokemon and get ready to lose because it sucks. I know there's some Pokemon I'm not covering, but this video's over 15 minutes long and that's way beyond my limit, so I'll start to wrap things up. Hey, Cinccino's a thing for Lugia V-Star maybe? If you want to chuck a 1-1 or 2-2 line into Lugia, it could be your secret big attacker, dealing 70 damage for each special energy card attached to it. So double Archeops to Cinccino and you can dish out 280 damage with a single prizer. Now we have probably the wackiest card in the set, Bramblegast. If your opponent has taken 5 prize cards, you have Kricketune in play, and you attach either a Luxurious Cape or Hero's Cape to Bramblegast, then it has 490 hit points. Which means it can still be one-shot by Radiant Charizard, but still. A 490 hit point single prizer with a coin flip attack? This is my dream! It's just a shame that Cherim rotates out, so we'll have to find other less good options for energy. And to finish, there's a couple of Stage 2 Pokemon with potential, and both of whom can use Neo Upper Energy and Reversal Energy well. For 2 Water Energy, Feraligatr does 280 damage at the cost of putting 5 damage counters on itself. That's pretty cool, and can easily be paired with Palkia V-Star and Radiant Greninja. As for Vikavolt, yes, that's how you say it, Honeynut Cheerios Cannon does 280 damage if you have 2 Charjabug on the bench. Vikavolt will require TM Evolution and other shenanigans to work, and no, Radiant Charjabug doesn't count towards the damage, but I can already hear For the Win whacking off as he prepares to build this for a video. From what I've seen so far, Temporal Forces is shaping up to be a really good set, and the game will see a seismic shift on March 21st with all the new cards plus rotation. But what are you looking forward to in Temporal Forces? Type it with your toes into the comments.